All right, let's go to line number one and welcome to the show, Claude Cummings Jr. Claude is president of the Communication Workers of America. He's a native of Houston, Texas, longtime community activist who believes in the power of bringing people together. Today is President's Day, and he's one of several presidents that we are featuring here on America's Workforce. And he's pretty significant here. Well, they're all significant, but 2 years ago in 2023, Claude became the first black man elected to lead the Communication Workers of America. And it's Black History Month. Today is President's Day. Claude, you check all the boxes here, brother. Appreciate you coming to America's Workforce. And I tell you, I've been following you and the Communication Workers of America, big sponsors of America's Workforce on behalf of District 4 in the Midwest. We always check in with Frank Matthews each and every month, so we appreciate your sponsorship. But how are you doing, Mr. President? Let's start right there. I mean, it's a confusing world, a lot of chaos going on, but how you holding up, brother?
Man, I am holding up fine, and thank you for interviewing me. And hello to you and your listening audience. And listen, we're in some tough times, right? But when times get tough, people get tough also, and we move forward. And that's what I've always done as a leader. 38 years with the Communication Workers of America, and every position I've been in, I've been the first black to hold that position, and we've gone through some tough times, but we've survived. And as tough as things are right now, I believe that we will survive this 4 years of the Trump administration. But we've just got to fight back. We just have to push back. So other than that, I'm doing fine. You know, being the first black elected president of CWA has been great. It's been a joy, to be quite honest with you, to serve members. You know, my policy has always been I work for the members. The members don't work for me. And I think my members understand that. And they know that even in tough times like this, I'm going to stand up and push back on behalf not of just CWA members, but working people in general.
Claude, if you don't mind, why don't you talk about your story, rising the ranks? And you know the challenges. It wasn't easy, especially going back to the civil rights days, and you got a long history in unionism here. But if you don't mind, would you share your story? I think it's important to cast a light on people like yourself that have overcome so many obstacles. As I mentioned, it's Black History Month. We talk about people that have risen to the ranks of unions like the CWA, like various unions. We've had several interviews over the years with folks that have made a positive impact on all workers' lives. Talk to me about your story.
Well, my story actually starts in 1946, believe it or not, with probably before any of us were born that are on this podcast right now. You are I with my father. My father started working for AT&T in 1946 as part of the custodial staff. Of course, during those years, black men could do nothing but janitorial work for AT&T. My dad was a member of CWA, and to tell you another interesting part of that before I really get into his history, which was his first fight was not with AT&T, it was actually with the union, because black men and white technicians met on separate nights, even though they're all members of CWA. My father pushed back, as well as other janitorial staff, about that, because they were paying the same amount of dues, money. And the technicians that they were cleaning behind every night, said to union leadership, why can't these men meet with us on the same night that everybody else meets? Because they pay the same dues. They're hardworking men that have families, just like we have families. They should not be treated any differently. And my dad made it pretty clear during those years to union leadership that if they could not meet on the same night, they were going to leave CWA and start their own union and have negotiations with AT&T. And so those white technicians actually went to leadership of the union and said, these men need to be given an opportunity to meet with us on the same night. And that actually happened. And another interesting part of that history is while my father was on a 15-minute CWA break, he looked out the window one day and saw a nice looking lady standing by the bus stop and started talking with her, kind of meddling with her, flirting and everything. They started dating. They got married. And a couple of years later, I showed up. So I'm actually a product of both AT&T and CW and CWA. And so let's move forward several years later. In 1973, and another interesting story, since this is Black History Month, the consent decree, of course, took place where AT&T and other companies were forced to allow women and Black men to move into positions other than those positions that they previously had been in, janitorial positions. And so AT&T was forced to start hiring people of color and women in the technical positions. I happened to stop by to check on an application. This lady had a bunch of just a stack of applications as I walked in, and she said to me, Mr. Cummings, we were just getting ready to call you. I thought to myself, how could that be with this large stack of applications that she has there? The truth of the matter is she saw that I was Black, and of course she called me over and said, we were just getting ready to call you, but the truth of the matter is she saw that I was Black and she knew that she needed to hire me. So in 1973, I got elected, and I mention that because think about what's going on today. The president is trying to get rid of DEI programs, right? And I would not be employed today had it not been for the fact that the government made AT&T start hiring people of color and women. So I got hired in 1973, and even though I wasn't real active in the union, I would occasionally go to union meetings just to stay informed, as my dad had asked me to do, right? Since he was a union member, to make sure that first of all, that the union was doing the right things, to make sure everyone was being represented properly. As a matter of fact, let me go back again. After I was born and old enough to go places with my father would go to the union hall to buy supplemental insurance for his family. And there was a young lady working in there named Mary Anna. He and Mary Anna got to be pretty good friends. And so I enjoyed whenever I would go with my dad to talk with her as well as him when they were sometimes, working out his paperwork to make to get his receipt for his payments for his insurance. By that time, the young lady, Mariana, who would take my dad's supplemental payment, moved from that position with CWA into a secretarial position in CWA. So during the 1983-84 time frame, I would visit with Mariana occasionally to see how things were going on. We elected a new team of officers at CWA. They were white men, and I would go to those union meetings sometime, and I would say to myself, if I wanted to get active and maybe possibly run for an office, these guys were pretty popular. It would probably be impossible for me to move in. They were all young. They were all aggressive in dealing with management on issues that were important to us. So I thought to myself, I'll continue to be a good member. I will be, I'll get involved in some of the committees and things of that nature, and and just move on with my life, right, as a technician for AT&T. But after about 6 or 7 months of those new officers being elected, I happened to pass by the 13th floor of the AT&T building I was working on, and to make this a little bit plainer, the CWA Union Hall was right across the street from the AT&T building. I noticed that those secretaries, including Mariana, were sitting outside having lunch. Didn't think much about it. I said they're all white women, and so they are sitting out there getting a tan. The second day, I passed by the window, looked outside, looked through the window at them outside, and they were having lunch again. The third day, I looked out of that window to just view what was going on at the Union Hall, and they were outside eating lunch again. But there was something else strange happening that day. It was raining. And so I actually took a break to go talk with Mariana and the two other secretaries that I did not know as well as I knew her, and asked them, why are you guys outside having lunch in the rain with umbrellas? And Mariana said to me, Claude, you remember the officers that were elected? And I said, yes. I attend union meetings, so I don't know them all that well, but I thought they were doing a pretty good job representing us against AT&T. She said, well, they have directed us to take our breaks and our lunches in the women's restroom. Now, CWA Local 6222 had two buildings, a building with a restaurant and at the bottom of it, and the meeting hall. The office building had the space that you could take breaks and lunches in, but the women were being forced to take their breaks and their lunches in the women's restroom. And I said, that's unbelievable. You guys are really not, you're not telling me the truth. There's got to be something else going on. Say, Claude, we can't take you in now because we'll get disciplined, but come back and meet us tonight. And I went back that night, and they took me inside the Union Hall and showed me the bathroom with a table, a couch. The table had salt and pepper shakers on it and napkins. And I said, well, this is ridiculous. Who's standing up for you guys? And they said, Claude, everyone's afraid of us. Even our own union have terrorized us and terrorized our union. And I said, well, who's speaking out at membership meetings for you? And they said, absolutely no one. So I actually attended the next union meeting, and I made a motion that our union employees should not be treated worse than our members that work for AT&T. And they should be allowed to take their breaks and lunches where everyone else does that works for that local. I was actually afraid. I was terrified because it was the first time that I'd actually spoke, on the floor of a union meeting and made a motion. But I got a standing ovation. And I turned around and head out the door. To be honest with you, to go down to a bar right down the street, because I was scared to death to get a drink to kind of calm myself down. And I'm not embellishing this story at all. A group of those members there, most of them women, stopped me before I got out the door, and they said this to me. They said, "A leader is born." And I'm not embellishing this story at all. That's exactly what they said to me. And they ran me for office in the next election cycle. They formed a committee, a campaign to elect Claude Cummings vice president of CWA. And they took time off, showed me how to campaign, took me to places, raised money, and I was elected in the next election cycle. I took out one of those guys that had given those women the directive to take their breaks and lunches in the bathroom. and I've been elected ever since. 38 years later, I've been elected. I've never lost a union election. I've been elected to 4 different positions. I was elected vice president. I served there for 12 years. Um, then I ran for president. I was elected and I served for 11 and a half years, because then I was also ran for the district vice president of CWA. I served there for 11 and a half years. And then in 2023 ran for president of CWA, and I was elected. I've been elected for 2 years. So that's my history. I've got a history of standing up for workers. I think every position that I've served in, I left it better than I found it, and I also left it more diverse as far as leadership than I found it. I placed women in positions. I placed members of color in positions. We bargained some of the best contracts, I believe, in CWA during my time as a District 6 Vice President. Some historic things, I believe, that are still in the last contract, such as allowing members who retire to still receive active health care benefits through the end of that particular contract. That has not been bargained any place in CWA other than in District 6, and that was my attempt to try to get AT&T to negotiate, even though we can't negotiate on behalf of retirees, but at least give them the mindset of maybe there are things that we need to do better for our retired members. Had I been the vice president of District 6 in this next round of negotiations, my plans were to try to do more for to get better benefits for our retired members. So that's my history, a history of standing up and speaking out. But for those who were afraid to speak out for themselves, because those women that I helped actually were union members of their union, but the leaders of CWA that they worked for had actually terrified even their unions and threatened discipline if those employees, spoke out on the horrible condition, that they were working in, under those men that were in charge of our union at that time.
Well, Claude, I
know I gave you a lot there.
You gave me a lot,
but I thought
you gave me a lot. And you know what? I don't know what your middle name is, but it should be Courage. Claude Courage Cummings, because you demonstrated courage in what you did so many years ago. And frankly, I wish our members of Congress had some more courage. Can we take a quick break and talk about that next, Claude?
Sure, we can.
Okay, I love it. Claude Cummings, President of the Communication Workers of America, CWA-union.org. This is a special edition, President's Day edition of America's Workforce. Our second guest on the show is the leader of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Mr. Sean O'Brien. All happening on America's Workforce. Back in a few minutes. Don't go away. Claude Cummings Jr., President of the Communication Workers of America, on our live line today. This is a President's Day edition of America's Workforce. We salute union presidents. That's what we do here on America's Workforce. Claude, thank you for sharing your personal story, especially in light of Black History Month. It's important that we show the struggle, what you went through, and you spoke out. That's the important thing. There's a lot of people right now, you know where I'm going with this, brother. There's a lot of people that are afraid of the guy in the White House. He's got a lot of power, almost too much power. Thank you, U.S. Supreme Court. But what do you say to the members of Congress? It's almost like they're witnessing the Constitution being attacked right now. What do you say to those representatives? I know you work on the Hill a lot. You're very vocal. You want to get certain legislation that's pro-worker passed, and you're all about DEI, which is now a dirty word. So what do you say to these members of Congress, Claude? I'd like to hear from you on that, because it's important that we get these messages out and we're not afraid.
Yeah, I think everyone knows right now, if you're really listening to what's happening, that Donald Trump thinks he can roll back 60 years of history with the stroke of a pen. He has revoked an executive order signed by Lyndon Johnson prohibiting federal contractors from discriminating in employment decisions on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Not only does he want to roll back history, he wants to take it even further by requiring companies that do business with the government to certify that they are not making any attempt to promote diversity or equality in hiring. As I stated a couple of minutes ago, I would not be here today if it was not for the consent decree that made it clear that AT&T and other companies had to open their doors for women and people of color. I believe that, and speaking to some Congress members, that they're not trying to trace every rabbit hole that Trump is placing before us, right? And in every executive order. But the truth of the matter is, I'm somewhat surprised that they have not pushed back as much as they have. Thank God for some of the courts that are trying to slow him down, even if they're not able to stop him. At least he's slowing him down. So I know that I have a meeting that is set up with Senator Schumer. I'm going to be talking to Leader Jeffries about what actually is taking place. Why aren't you guys being more effective? Why aren't these speeches at rallies? At one thing I think is great, but the truth of the matter is they need to be figuring out how they can affect it. Because I've got to believe that there are even some Republicans that think that he's gone too far. Now, whether they're willing to speak out and helping to pass some legislation or something that will stop him, I don't know if they'll go that far. But the truth of the matter is, we say in the labor movement, when we fight, we win. And right now, I just don't see that fight, surprisingly, from Democrats that I thought that I would see. And I don't know why. If you just really want to know the truth, other than, again, as I stated earlier, that maybe they're just wanting to wait to see how they can push back on some key things. But I'm not seeing the pushback that I thought I would see.
Yeah. Well, one thing is for sure, this is an opportune time for organizing. And Fred Redmond. Fred is, I love talking to him. We do a segment with him each and every month. It's our first Friday with Fred. And he said this before Trump even was inaugurated. Organize. And I'll tell you, I was just talking recently about Everett Kelly, another black leader at AFGE, American Federation of Government Employees. And we know what's going on with federal employees right now. They're having a banner year organizing right now. I'm sure you're going to go in the same direction with all this, right?
Right. And I really, I thank God for the unions, right? Because the unions are having rallies, the unions are pushing back, the unions are on podcasts, the unions are doing everything that we can to push back. We're filing our lawsuits, right?
Yeah.
To try to stop. CWA entered a lawsuit with Doge and AFG and others to push back against Musk going into the Department of Labor. We don't want him there looking at agreements and things of that nature that we have. We have apprenticeship programs. We have other grants that are being used to help train those that want to get into different industries. I mean, that's none of his business. And the idea of having a person that's not elected, has not been, he's no official representative of the government, to just allow him to go into these different entities and view personal information and things of this nature is absolutely ridiculous. And even members of Congress ought to be filing lawsuits or doing something to make sure that this crap is stopped. And so thank God for the unions who are brave enough now to say, we're just not going to sit back and do nothing. We're going to fight back.
Yep.
And we're going to continue to fight back. Last night I had a meeting with CWA activists across the country, and I said to them this: just like I stood up for the Maximus workers that we were trying to organize and held news conferences, and I actually got arrested because I was standing in front of HHS, raising hell about those fellow workers that were being paid pennies on when they and being criticized because they were trying to form a union, under CWA. I will do the same thing if CWA comes under attack and other unions come under attack. I will speak out just as strongly against this administration as I have, in the past.
Yeah.
And I think it's horrible. I will tell you that I knew that if Trump got elected, that it was going to be tough, and I knew that he was going to be vindictive. But I never thought he would do things like take away the security protection for even some Republican ex members of his cabinet. How
Right.
vindictive is that?
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty nasty.
And if he'll do that, if he'll do that to his own party and ex cabinet members of his, right? Just think about what he'll do to us now if we don't stand up and fight back.
All right. We're going to leave it on that note. Claude Cummings Jr., president of the Communication Workers of America, national website, cwa-union.org. Like you said, Claude, thank God for unions. My God, union strong. Okay, brother, you are welcome on this show anytime. So I appreciate your fire, your passion, and your input here for America's workers. So stay safe, stay strong, and stay in touch, okay?
Well, thank you so much. And if I could just end with this one thing, and I want everyone to think about this. Think about this. 1946, my father made that fight to make sure union members meet on the same night. And now here I am in 2025, the president of that very union where he had that first fight with. It's historic in itself. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and we want to continue to support what you're doing in any way that we can.